Welcome to this episode of the 1600 Sessions. Today we're going to talk with our newest author, Giovanna McBride, on her book, Gigi at the White House. This is a wonderful story of her reminiscing about her time as a young girl at the White House during the presidency of George and Laura Bush. Before we have our conversation with Gigi, let's hear from Mrs. Bush.
One of the highlights of living in the White House is welcoming visitors from around the world. President Bush and I enjoyed hosting presidents and prime ministers from many countries, the Queen of England, the Dalai Lama, and the Pope on his birthday, and America's winning Olympic athletes. But President Bush and I especially look forward to welcoming the families of the people who work at the White House and getting to watch their children grow up. Giovanna McBride, or Gigi as we call her, first came to the White House a few days after the inauguration in 2001. She was only 3 months old. 8 years later, when our time in the White House came to a close, Gigi had grown into an active little girl who was eager to explore the White House. I'm thrilled that Gigi has taken her special experience and turned it into a charming children's book. Children of all ages will be able to tour the White House as they turn the pages and learn about the bowling alley, the pool, the United States Secret Service, and what it's like to celebrate holidays, especially Christmas and the 4th of July at the White House. Gigi at the White House is the perfect story for parents and grandparents to read with their children and grandchildren, and I look forward to reading it with Mila, Poppy, and Hal. Happy reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Bush. It's always wonderful to continue working with you and other former First Ladies, and thank you for your extraordinary legacy and the work that you contributed to the White House during the presidency of President Bush. So Gigi, I'm really excited to talk with you about this new book, and I'm really curious to know, how did you come up with the idea of doing this book?
First of all, Stuart, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and thank you to the White House Historical Association for giving me the opportunity to publish my book that I have been thinking about writing since I was about 10 years old. And so the idea came from when my mom was working as First Lady Laura Bush's chief of staff in the White House. I was 4 years old until about 8 years old, and I was very lucky to be able to visit the White House so often. And a particular memory that has always stuck with me is also in the first scene of my book, where Mrs. Bush and I are talking and eating breakfast after I got to sleep over at the White House. And when I went home and told my mom about how special and cool it was to sleep there, it really started to sink in just how amazing and uncommon it was. And I'd always had it in the back of my head that I wanted to share my experiences, and I thought that a children's book would probably be the best way to do that, since I had such a fun and amazing time always visiting the White House as a child.
Well, you clearly had a unique and wonderful experience, and it's demonstrated in this book. And kids who enjoy this book, enjoy reading this book, what do you hope they'll learn from their own experience?
You know, I really hope that children will learn that the White House is such a fun and special place. There's always things going on, and the First Lady and the President are constantly opening up the White House to so many people for so many different events. And as much as it is an office, it is also a home to a family with regular things going on as well. So I really hope that children can learn and want to explore more about the White House and its history, as well as the fun events that are always taking place there.
Well, you said you were young, ages 4 to 8 roughly, that you were there. And 4 is when you're really developing some of your earliest memories of life. And yours were actually of visiting the White House. So what are some of your very first memories of those White House visits?
So actually my first memories come from when I was about 2 to 3 years old, and my family and I were going to the White House to take a nighttime tour of the Christmas decorations. And my brother was 5.5 at the time, and we were dancing to the music in the grand foyer near the Christmas tree. And we have so many pictures of that one time, and that has kind of always stuck with me as my earliest memory of being in the White House. And something that I've also just learned recently from my parents telling me But my first visit to the White House, it was January 2001, and former President George H.W. Bush and former First Lady Barbara Bush were in D.C. the week after President Bush's inauguration, and they invited my family to come see them at the White House. And my parents tell me we were all sitting in the third floor solarium with the new president and first lady and the former president and first lady, and they were all passing me around. And my mom even says that Governor Jeb Bush was there too and apparently held me on his lap. So I just kind of learned all of this recently, but so I guess that would be my first visit. But when I was about 4 years old is when I started consistently visiting there.
So now you're in college, and it's hard to believe that the Bush presidency ended over 12 years ago. So now, from your vantage point of a college student in Texas, if you could go back now and say spend a few days or a week at the White House and doing something, what would you like to do? What were some of the events that you enjoyed the most that you'd like to do again?
So one of the most fun events that I always loved was the Easter egg roll. I always enjoyed going to that, and one of the most special times was when the Jonas Brothers were the entertainment there, and they performed, and that was such a fun event. And my brother was there, my cousins were there. It was a wonderful time, and that was just probably one of the most fun events that I always loved. And I think if I could spend a few days, I would probably just love to go back and see my mom's office, because we would spend a lot of time there when there weren't events going on. We would just go to visit my mom, and that's something that has always been really special to me. So I think I would love to go back and, sit in her office for a little bit. And definitely, who wouldn't want to sleep over at the White House again? I would love to do that. So just a lot of very special memories that I would love to, do over.
Well, it was so nice of Mrs. Bush to join us in the early part of this podcast. And I know that you have so many memories of her as First Lady and your time as being young and in the White House. What are some of those memories of Mrs. Bush as a First Lady that you have?
Yes, well, I am so grateful to her for always welcoming my family, and especially my brother and I, into her home. Mrs. Bush was always so great with kids and was always hosting and planning fun events like movies and popcorn in the theater, or birthday parties for their dogs, or congressional picnics, just to get children to the White House and enjoy their time there. She was also very interested in our lives, like what we were learning in school, and she even came to my elementary school when it was awarded the Blue Ribbon for Excellence in Education. So I'm just very grateful for her.
Well, you mentioned your mom, and that's Anita McBride, and she was First Lady's Chief of Staff. She's also serving on our board of directors here at the White House Historical Association, and is a really great leader for our organization. And your dad, Tim McBride, is a good friend of mine as well, and of our work. Both of them worked in the White House directly for a president and a first lady, which is really remarkable for you and your brother. What did your parents' roles and watching them and observing them working directly for a president and first lady teach you about the presidency and about first families?
Yes, both of my parents worked in the White House, and that is also where they met. My dad was the personal aide to Vice President George H.W. Bush, and my mom worked for President Reagan at the time. And then when George W. Bush became president, my mom went back to work in the White House and eventually became Chief of Staff to First Lady Laura Bush. And my parents greatly admired and respected the presidents and first ladies that they got to know and work for. So it really taught my brother and me to learn and be interested in American history. And we were just so lucky to get to see it up close. And as I got older, I became more aware of the responsibilities of a president and first lady, because that was a lot of what I heard my parents talk about. And especially my mom would be going on trips with the president and first lady all over the world. So I started to learn how demanding and important the job of being the president and first lady is, as well as like how hard the staff works. So that was definitely a few of the things that I learned.
Well, you saw presidents and first ladies, particularly President Bush and First Lady Laura Bush, up close and personal in a way that most people only see them on television. Are they, obviously they're real people, but when you get to know them the way you did, are they real people in person? Are they the same as you see on television?
In my experience, yes, the Bushes are some of the most down-to-earth people. They welcomed me and my family into their home, and even though they were serving our country in jobs as demanding as being the president and first lady, they always seemed like such real and genuine people to me. And so often people forget that the president and first lady have personal lives and like to do normal things like we all do.
Well, people love to hear about presidential pets, and I know you have your own dog, Molly, that you love. But you also got to meet up close and personal Barney and Miss Beasley, who were celebrities in the White House. Tell us about some of your memories of Barney and Miss Beasley.
Yes, well, it was always so much fun to see them running around the White House. And one year, First Lady Laura Bush, she threw a fun birthday party for them, and all of the staff's children were invited, and we made cards and had birthday cake, and it was just such a fun memory and time that we got to celebrate the dogs and be with all of the staff's children. It was a really, really fun memory. And also when I came with my kindergarten class to see Marine One take off from the South Lawn, we were all lined up on the balcony, and one of the First Lady's staff, Paige Austin, who we're very close with, the dogs really loved her, she loved them, and she brought Miss Beasley up for all of us to see and pet. And so that is definitely a very fun memory of getting to spend time with Barney and Miss Beasley.
That's really a great story. Well, your brother Andrew is a few years older than you are. Did he get to enjoy the behind-the-scenes time at the White House as much as you did?
Yes, both my brother Andrew and I got to enjoy spending a great deal of time at the White House, whether it was, trick-or-treating for Halloween, meeting the Olympians like Michael Phelps, the Easter egg rolls. They were all events that we got to experience. And sometimes my babysitters would take Andrew and I to the White House after school, and we would just visit my mom at her office. So we both started to feel very comfortable there. We also got to meet a lot of the staff in the First Lady's office and got to know them and became very close with the people that we would see very frequently. So my brother and I were both very lucky, very fortunate to be able to, take part in these events and see the behind-the-scenes life at the White House.
So when you had this idea to write this book, did you just elbow Andrew out of the way and didn't want a co-author?
We were thinking, he's in one of the pictures, and
okay, fair enough.
Yes.
You gave him his due.
Yes.
So since a lot of years have passed since then, as I mentioned, you're in college now. Have you had the opportunity to go back to the White House since you left the last time you were there as a little girl at 8? And what was it like? Was it seem different to you in any way, or was it just as you remembered?
So when I was in 8th grade, I joined my mom for a Christmas reception that the Obamas were hosting, and it was very, very special to be back there. It was the first time in probably 6 years that I had been back in the White House, but things still felt very familiar. Walking through the halls or seeing the staircase where we would go to my mom's office, it still felt very fresh. And so that was very fun.
Well, I recall seeing you at the White House last November in the Rose Garden for a dedication of a sculpture there, and you were looking around, sort of reminiscing a little bit. Tell us about that experience.
Definitely. I was very lucky to be able to go to that reception. That was very wonderful. But I was also very nostalgic the whole time that I was there, and I honestly was getting kind of emotional being back there. Everything felt very surreal. And I think it was the time that I could fully step back and appreciate the fact that I spent so much time there and really realize that it's not a common thing to do. And I've always felt very, very grateful for the opportunities to be at the White House. But I think that going back after I'd written this book just made me further realize what once-in-a-lifetime experiences that I had as a child.
Well, I'm sure writing this book and telling these stories brought back all kinds of memories for you reminiscing.
Yes, definitely.
So the Bush family has a large family with a lot of kids, and some of them were around your age at that time. Did you meet any of them, and Tell us about that.
Yes, so one of the Bush family kids that was around my age was Gigi Cook, who was President Bush's niece and daughter of Duro Bush. And so we would see each other frequently during the summer in Kennebunkport when we would be able to go and visit up in Maine, which was always very fun. And even after the Jonas Brothers came to the Easter egg roll, her and I went to a Jonas Brothers concert together a few months after that. So I was very lucky to spend a lot of time with her too.
That's really great. Well, everyone knows that the White House is the office of the president, but many people don't realize that they have a home life there too. You mentioned that earlier. What did you see and learn about presidential families and how they make that space a home? How do they turn it into not just an office, but a place where they live and do normal things like families do?
So even though it's a place of great history, there are private spaces in the White House that are really for the presidential families to make their own and be comfortable for them. When I was able to see the family kitchen, it was very homey, and other than the beautiful views of the White House lawn and Lafayette Park, it's like any other family kitchen. So I think presidential families really get to make those private spaces their own, as it would be in any other home. And there's also family celebrations. Jenna had a wedding reception. It was after their Texas wedding, but it was held at the White House. So like any other family would hold family parties. And also when I got the chance to sleep at the White House, it was a comfy bed and we went to sleep watching TV like you might do anywhere else. So I think in those private spaces, presidential families are really able to make the White House a home and not just an office.
Okay, now I'm going to put you on the spot. So one day, if you're president of the United States or you're a first lady, what would you want young people to experience when they visit your White House?
That is a really great question. I think I would want young people to know that the White House is a very special place, but to feel comfortable there. I would want them to wander through the room, sit on the furniture, have fun, learn some history, but mostly to feel a sense of belonging. And I would hope to be half as welcoming as the Bush family was to me. And in the front cover of the book, of me opening the door to the White House, I think that is really symbolic that I wanted people to be able to explore like the ins and outs and the behind the scenes of things that go on and happen every day and the fun events.
So this wonderful book is now out, and I hope everyone has the opportunity to have it, and anyone with kids or grandkids, this is a perfect gift for them, and it tells wonderful stories. But it's a very special book from you and your memories of being in the White House with President and Mrs. Bush, and of course your mom. In closing, since she opened this podcast for us with the message, what is the message you'd like to send to Mrs. Bush about your memories and the privilege that she gave you of spending all that wonderful time at the White House?
I would want to thank her for all of the amazing opportunities that she gave me, because those are such formative memories for me and something that I am so grateful for and will continue to be grateful for the rest of my life, because I know that those were such unique experiences, and this book would not have been possible without her generosity and kindness. And I would want her to know how grateful I am for everything that she gave me.
Well, thank you, Gigi. It's wonderful to hear your story, and I can add from the perspective of the White House Historical Association that we've been privileged to work with 12 presidents and first ladies since Mrs. Kennedy founded us in 1961, and although I was not president, working with the President and Mrs. Bush undertook many important projects for the White House with the Lincoln Bedroom, the library, and other spaces in the house that really made an impact on the house and a wonderful legacy for them. Having you share a little bit about the personal side of them and their generosity and graciousness to welcome you into their home, into the People's House, and share these events has really made it special and brought it a little bit more to life. So thank you for doing this book with us, and I look forward to seeing you on your book tour.
Thank you so much, Stuart.
Great. Take care.